I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to today's episode. I'm excited to bring this one to you because it's a departure from talking to normal quilters and makers like we do on the show. I've got Abigail Wade. She is a certified financial planner, and I thought this would be such a cool opportunity to talk small business, tariff proofing our businesses, protecting ourselves in these kind of uncertain times, but also just kind of tips and tricks from the brain of a financial guru to help kind of give insight on decisions that can be made to help us make sure our businesses are around for a long time. So I'm so excited to bring this to you. I just had such a great time chatting with Abigail, and I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Hi, Abigail. How are you?
Hi, Amanda. I'm doing so well. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited we're doing this. So, for anybody who's like, who the heck is this lady? You are not my normal type of guest. You're a certified financial planner, which
Yeah.
might seem like, why are you having this person on a quilting show? But so many of us are business owners. We have small businesses. They can scale from like what I do out of my home up to, a brick and mortar shop. And we're all facing a lot of kind of uncertain times right now. And so I thought it'd be such a great time to collaborate on talking finance, where creative world meets business world, finance world, and you are our gal. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, definitely excited to speak, to your community of amazing quilters, and I'm excited to learn more about that too. Not
Yeah.
super familiar with that world, but that's so cool. So, yeah, I'm a certified financial planner. I'm a financial advisor. I help step everyday folks and business owners through financial planning. So what that means is anything as much as wherever you are in your journey, we're here to help. And that's our mantra. We're here to help people who want to be helped. So that's our number one goal and our philosophy at RM Wade Company. So I work with my father, Robert Wade. We're a father-daughter duo, and we work as a team to really help clients create financial plans, and then also create an investment plan as well. So that's our specialty, but I really want to drill in today. And I know we talked a little bit before of, we work with a lot of business owners, small, medium, large business owners, and we get lots and lots of nuanced questions through the planning process. Um, you know, to help people, successfully run a business. So with uncertain times or times of transition, that's where we add a ton of value to help people sit down and put pen to paper and create a plan, and decide, when can we scale? How can we scale, in an uncertain time? How do we, keep this business afloat? So we're always that partner, and that consultant along the way.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I think and like for my own personal experience, it has been really hard to find people who want to help my small business because I'm small. Like my quilting business is not, it's just me. And it
Mhm.
was just me and my mom. But even before that, like when it was just the two of us, like it was just so hard to get like financial help with people who like gave a crap about our business. And so it like warms me to hear that like you're like, no, I'm here for you. And
Yeah.
when we were talking before, you were saying like, no, I love helping small businesses. Like that's like what we do. We want you to be successful because then that means, better life for you, better life for the people who interact with you in your business. And like it just helps our economy and our way of life all the way around. So I love to
100%.
hear you say that. So
Yeah, we are small business owners ourselves, so we resonate. Like our client base is a lot of entrepreneurs like us, and I think when we resonate together, it's much easier to work together. Sometimes I feel like I hear a lot from people. Oh, I didn't know if I was ready for a financial advisor, or I didn't think I had enough money, or I didn't know how someone could help me. If I don't have, maybe investable assets at that point, but we can be a partner anywhere along the way. And that's what we exist to do. And a lot of, advisors may say, if you don't have this much amount of money, we're not even going to help you or sit down with you. And that's not, what we do. We help anyone wherever they are in their journey. So it's a great thing, and helping, business owners grow and have some peace of mind for the future is really like where we come in. So, we're a small business, so we can help other small businesses. So it's great.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to learn a little bit about you personally before we dive into like all the businessy talk, because I know some people can kind of glaze over, but I want to get to know you a little bit more. So you're in Florida. Have you always lived in Florida?
No, I have not. So I grew up in Toledo, Ohio,
Okay.
Midwest, and that's where we have two offices, actually. So my dad started our firm, oh boy, over 37 years ago in Ohio. So that's where, I grew up, and I have two sisters. And then I moved to Chicago, Illinois to go to college. I went to DePaul University, and
Nice.
that's where I developed my love of financial services. Through, in college I had a great internship, and I really grew through that. And then that's when I decided to join, the industry after I graduated, and I was at a different firm for about 5 years. And then I moved down to Florida. I think it was in 2021. Yeah, I moved down here, and I decided to take that jump. And I worked for the same firm for a couple of years, and then I decided to jump with my dad. And it was a great decision to work with family. I'm very blessed to do that. So yeah, Midwest roots, and that's really like the crux of our business is, helping people, and that's where a lot, our firm started, of course. And then we expanded down to South Florida. So now I live in Boca Raton, and I work at the office here. So, and I go back to Toledo a ton to help clients as well. But we have clients all over the U.S. So, where we are doesn't necessarily matter. But yeah, I'm down in Florida now, and it's getting hot now, but the winter
Yeah.
is amazing.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. It gets so cold here. So I'm sure I know my husband and I are like, where can we move that's like so warm, but also not hard to get to? So in case we want to come back and visit, or like if family wants to come see us, because we're like getting real sick of winter. But that's so cool. And yeah, I guess was there like a defining moment that made you like realize you wanted to work with your dad, or that, you know, I don't know, was there something that just like clicked for you that was like, oh, I actually want to go over there?
Great question. So when I started at my internship during college, I worked with an all-female team, which is like pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So that was really great. And that inspired me to join the industry and know like, okay, I can create and be an entrepreneur within this framework of wealth management and helping clients build financial plans and investment plans. And then it was kind of the cherry on top that my dad had a business that was, in Ohio, and, he wanted to expand and continue to grow. So I would say, once I got my licenses and was up and running, I'm like, I want to build my own business, and
Mhm.
what better place to do it than with my family? So I'm blessed to have that option. So it was always in the back of my head. And then when the time felt right in 2022, I took the leap, and um, it's been such a great transition to work with him. And we just have a lot of fun together, and it's fun to learn from my dad and see what he's built over these years and all of his experience, and learn from him, but also have some of my own experience to bring to the table. So it's a beautiful thing. But there wasn't really a moment. I think it was just always in the back of my mind. And then I was like, you know
Mm.
what? I'm just gonna, take the plunge and do it and take a risk. So
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think too, sometimes you just, there isn't like a defining moment, like you said, there's just like something that kind of lives in the back of your brain. And then it's just about timing of like, oh, this seems like it's it. Like I'm ready to do this thing now. And it just kind of has to live in you for a little bit until like everything else aligns. But that's awesome. Like having worked with family, like
Hmm.
I I love my mom. She's so amazing. Um and having like my family kind of involved in the business was, it was great for a time. And
Yeah.
you know, we split up the business for different reasons, but I guess like, do you think like because you both are in the financial world, you have the, you know, you're so focused on like knowing how money moves and how it works, like that eliminates some of the barriers of like making business decisions, because I think sometimes that's where, like, especially working with family can like get kind of ugly, is like people aren't on the same page, like money wise.
A great question. And there's so many times where I think we have such a background in financial services and in making financial decisions
Yeah.
that it's not as difficult because we just have that background. Like I have a business degree, I have an economics degree. So like, scaling decisions or, creative decisions, we work really well together on. And yeah, there's still decisions where we have to deliberate and make a decision together. And that can be difficult for sure.
Mhm.
But I think it's kind of like our work and our business decisions go hand in hand.
Mhm.
Whereas maybe, with you and your, I don't want to speak for you, but you have, that amazing creative side. You're making quilts, you're in this great community. But then people forget that owning a business is also like 80% of that. And you have to make very large financial decisions as
Yeah.
well as do your craft well, of course. So our craft kind of talks to our business anyway. Like it's just
Mhm.
one and the same, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So we do what we do really well. But yeah, running the business on the back end has a lot more that goes into it than people might think. So I have the financial planning, like I'm a certified financial planner. So like I
Mhm.
have that background to make decisions together. And, I'm very much in the numbers. I like to see, I'm a very logical person. So I like to map things out. I'm very big into spreadsheets. So I'm like, okay, I always like to look back on, what have we done in the past? Can we improve that? And then, looking at, dollars and cents, like how much, revenue we were bringing in and what are our expenses and things like that,
Mhm.
to make more informed decisions. And then, so we do it for our own business, which is awesome, obviously for us, but then I can also turn around and help our clients make those decisions as well for their businesses. Um, so yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it just gets so tricky, and I think it can be kind of a pain point, I think, for some businesses like to grow. And so I guess this is kind of weird where we can segue into these like more financial type questions, but I guess you know, there's a lot of kind of hubbub, I guess, is for lack of a better word, around like what's going on with tariffs and what that's doing to the quilting world, like in
Mhm.
terms of what it's going to take to get fabric and what it's going to take to get the luxuries, I honestly, that we're used to. And some businesses have closed down already because they already can't weather that, excess of 150%
Right.
increase in fees that they can't reasonably fully pass on to their customer, but can't fully take on themselves. And so I guess like as we kind of move through this time, like do you see kind of a path emerging that some businesses are taking, or is there like, yeah, I guess some ideas you have for how that can
Yeah.
be mitigated?
A great question. So we're seeing a lot of, I would say the key word is uncertainty right now. And we see that with our clients' portfolios and how markets are moving in this current juncture. Um, and, I think it's very reactionary to headlines. A headline comes out of, oh, we're going to, 200% tariff on this or that. Um,
Mhm.
and things react in the short term to that. In terms of a way forward, like I'm just as much, uncertain as the next guy, but I am certain of a few things. And that is, creating a plan, is really like the crux of everything we do and recommend, because in times of uncertainty, I have this sort of financial plan and a way forward. And creating a plan for if things are tight, how can I scale back and still stay afloat? So that's, the good old budget cuts comes back to budgeting on an individual level, of course, but then on a business level, because as a small business owner, your business is a direct extension of your pretty much balance, personal balance sheet in some cases, depending how close you are to it. Um, so of course, getting back to your budget and maybe um, just looking at it, of course, from that level. But I do have a couple of things. So I would say some great tools for business owners. building a business emergency fund is a huge thing. So, um, I always recommend this for individuals. We're Dave Ramsey SmartVestor Pros, so we
Okay.
follow Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps to stay out of debt and build long-term wealth. So you can still use that framework for a business. So meaning, having an emergency fund for 3 to 6 months of expenses looks at, how much am I spending on average per month? And then
Mhm.
making sure you have at least 3 to 6 months of that. And if you're teetering on, well, how do I know if I need 3 or how do I know if I need 6 months cash in the emergency fund? I would say, how much money are you bringing in consistently that you can rely on that? So, like for example, if I owned a quilt business and I know that I have repeat customers, maybe every month or every quarter that
Mhm.
put in orders, like I pretty much can know, I'm pretty sure that money's coming in. So I would say, okay, if I can count on that for X amount of months, if that stopped, what money would I need, excuse me, to continue on comfortably and not have to swipe a credit card or close my doors. So having an emergency fund is that padding to know, like, if there's unforeseen circumstances, a tariff, um,
Yeah.
or something like that, where the price of a good or an input that you're putting out, if I'm buying, let's say, yarn or stitching, like I don't know what you call it,
Thread.
and it's, instead of being $10, it's now, 30, 40, $50. That's going to change a lot of things. So having that emergency fund to dip into is a key for success. Um, and then going through your fixed and variable costs is a big one.
Mm.
So fixed meaning, if we have any recurring charges, we know those are going to charge and it's going to be that amount per month. So of
Yeah.
course, buckling down on those and slashing the ones that maybe you um, could go without for a time would be a good idea. And then variable expenses are huge because now all of a sudden the supplies that you thought were X amount are now triple or double.
Hmm.
Even you said what, 150, 200%, like that's crazy. Um,
Yeah.
so looking at those and then maybe just scaling back as much as possible. And then another um, rule of thumb or, something that may help is diversifying revenue streams. So
Hmm.
maybe I always say this, like if you have a skill, like a really, really great skill, quilting, maybe consulting could be something that you could help people with. So
Yeah.
instead of having to buy, all this, maybe you scale back buying supplies and creating a product, but you help someone create a quilting business or give someone maybe your time to do a master class or some sort of consulting or teaching or education to collect some income off of that. And then I know there's like a ton of digital stuff out there. I don't know if you guys use Etsy or like things that connect you to, the consumer, but maybe creating some digital um, some sort of something that's digital that could help someone, like a guide or something like that could be, helpful as well. Does this all sound like
Yeah.
it's helpful?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. I just think it can feel really overwhelming. Like, I don't know what to do. This is going to hurt. How is my business supposed to survive in this? And I think, you know, having some experience with learning the Dave Ramsey stuff, like when I was younger, like that makes sense. And like understanding those like baby steps to like get out of debt, stay out of debt, having the emergency fund, um, and I think it can be so hard too because in the quilting world specifically, because that's what I know and that's what we're talking about. There are a lot of like I call it tchotchke, but it's like quilting tags and like there's every kind of ruler for every kind of fabric cut you could ever want to do. There's like 50 million types of thread. There's like all these different types of machines. Like it's like a multi-billion dollar industry. And so if people tell you sewing's a dying art, they're lying to you. But also like there are it's like so tempting to have all these new toys and get all this new stuff and like constantly be like keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing. And I think you're right, like that scaling back it can be so hard because there's so much amazing stuff out there to accumulate and to try to sell or be part of. It's like, well, I want to be someone who sells that stuff because I think that that's what's going to build my business. But if you're having to go beyond what your business can endure to get that thing, is it really good for you in the long run?
Right. And that's another thing of like managing your inventory in, in a volatile time like right now where you're unsure of costs, you don't want to overextend. So maybe keeping a little bit less inventory. I don't know, like if, for example, if you make, things to order in your business, maybe you wait until, we have some orders lined up and then, purchase the inventory because then you can really make sure that those margins are making sense for you to purchase the product and then turn around and sell it or improve it or however that looks in the framework of your business. But yeah, knowing your margins very, very cold is a good thing as well. But easier said than done if if the prices are changing every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But yeah, knowing your margins is a big thing to say, okay, what is the minimum I need to do here to make the revenue or make, ends meet that makes sense for me to continue doing this. Um, and, I know because there's a difference obviously between like okay doing a hobby but then now I'm doing this hobby to make money, so like what are the margins and then what is my break even point is pretty valuable, and sitting down with a financial planner like myself, we can help pinpoint those things, and do all that, and then another thing, so I won't bore you with our Dave Ramsey baby steps, but they're really great framework for anyone and a business owner,
Mhm.
and we just launched our podcast, Wade Through It All. We will, I'll give you the information to get that at the end of, towards the end of this episode, but we have a really
Yeah.
great couple of episodes out so far that explain how to know, when you're ready to invest, but beyond the investing, we go through the baby steps very much in depth so people can understand the framework for, building wealth, but also making your business profitable, and then staying out of debt ultimately is our goal.
That can be the hardest part is like feel not feeling like, well, I have to go in debt to be able to run this business. And there are ways, sometimes there's unavoidable things that just emergency fund can help. And sometimes there's things that go beyond that emergency fund. But I think ultimately, like, yeah, keeping those basics in mind can be helpful. It just feels stressful sometimes, like
Yeah.
no, remove all the extraneous, like go back to your numbers and look at those because that's going to tell you the story of your business, not everybody else's business, but what's your story.
Right, exactly. And I did a little poll amongst my peer group, of some words that they would use to describe, financial wellness, personal finance. And I think this can also tie in, obviously, with
Mhm.
business owning as well. Like, what are a word or what are some words, one word, two words that you would describe financial wellness? Um,
Mhm.
and a lot of people said overwhelming,
Mhm.
scary, uncertain. So I think those are popular feelings among folks, and it's hard to kind of say it out loud or identify that. So sitting down with an advisor is a really good idea, I would say. But then I also saw the words patience, contributions,
Mhm.
consistency. So I think those words as well are amazing to describe, owning a business as well, is continuing on, knowing your margins, knowing your inventory, sitting down with an advisor if need be to create a plan and to, and we can offer, consultative services as well too as part of our financial planning service to actually sit down and put pen to paper and maybe, help step folks through like what are my margins? What am I spending? Because it seems easy to say it, I'll go through and I'll create a budget or what have you, but it's not always that straightforward for people who aren't as familiar with creating a budget. I'm doing it every day for people, so it's like second nature to me.
Yeah.
So there's always resources out there, and advisors are one of those.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And I think just money overall is like can be such an emotionally charged topic, especially if you like me, and I'm saying you as in like the general you, but I should say me because for me it was a very emotional thing to talk about like at all. And so when I like my husband and I started getting serious and like, okay, we're gonna start, looking at each other's finances and figuring out where we're at as we were like, you know, merging our homes and getting married and doing all that stuff. It was like I would just cry every time. And he was like, it's just money. Like, why are you crying? And I'm like, because I feel so embarrassed or ashamed or whatever. And he was just like, why? If you didn't know these things before, like, I'm just trying to help us be on the same page so we can make decisions. And I feel like when you're able to remove the emotionality away from the money itself, like it becomes so much easier to make those decisions. And like, I still get a little emotional sometimes because I just want us to be okay, but like, and we are, so that's great. But
Yeah.
like having a person who's like being with somebody who's like already removed his emotions from it and has been able to like help me do the same in
Yeah.
in a sense so that we can work together. I'm like, oh, so I feel like if you are entering a business and you don't have a good emotional handle on what money means to you, these steps are going to feel like an attack.
Yes.
It
100%. And
feels like
that's
judgment.
yes, there's a lot of money has become sort of like a taboo topic. Like you don't go, to a dinner party with your friends and say, "Oh, so how much is everyone putting into their 401ks or who has credit card debt? Raise your hand." Like those are very personal things. Um, so it's interesting and I commend you for sitting down with your husband because a lot of couples, it can be a bone of contention, but I always say like if I'm dealing with like a married couple, it's very much like running a business together, like running your finances.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, like my dad and I, we run this business and we make decisions together. Um,
Hmm.
and it runs kind of similar to it. Like you got to be on the same page. You have to be honest. You have to,
Yeah.
be able to sit down and talk about it. And it's always very interesting to me too, to see, what are people's money stories? Because it's kind of, how you were brought up, like how you think of money, how you perceive money. Um,
Hmm.
how do you perceive, your business growth or, things like that. And everybody's so different and so nuanced, but it can be a difficult conversation. Um,
Yeah.
so I would say like the first step is, yeah, talk to your partner for sure. I always say like you are a team, you're running the business of your life together.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, like if you have a business on the side as well, like your quilting business, that's
Hmm.
also another thing that's, you're both are going to have to make emotional decisions on as well. And
Yeah.
it's almost impossible to approach your own money without emotion because you're the one who's worked hard to, earn your money. You're
Yeah.
the one who has to relinquish that money to, pay bills and things. Like no one likes to see money go out the door, right? We want to make money. We want to keep our money.
Hmm.
So bringing in an advisor kind of can help bring the emotionality out of it as well.
Hmm.
And that's where, sometimes, especially when times are uncertain, it's easy to get caught up and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But having a partner by your side, much like I'm sure your husband is very supportive as well. It's the same
Hmm.
kind of thing. Like, okay,
Yeah.
let's be logical about this. Let's make sure we're on the right track. Um, and ultimately set yourself up for success in the future and
Yeah.
peace of mind because I think that's what we're all after, right? Is like peace of mind that my business is going, peace of mind that I'm putting enough money away, I'm saving enough money, I'm staying out of debt.
Hmm.
And it's dollars and cents, of course, but it's also like a huge qualitative thing too. So
Yeah.
it's emotional. So that's great that you guys are having these discussions because it's so important um, for your financial wellness, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, like you're saying, if you have a planner with you, that's another relationship where it's like, yeah, you can bring your emotions to them and be like, this is stressing me out. And they can be like, let me show you why it's not that stressful. It's like they
Mhm.
can kind of take that on for you. And like I said, I'm struggling to find that. I know it's out there. I know it exists, but locally it's been struggle. But anyway, um, but yeah, too so many as like an elder millennial, it's like I monetized my hobby, right? Just like so many of us quilt business owners have done. But it's still something we love and something we want to share with the world because we love it and it brings so much joy. And so I guess
That's
like
beautiful.
um so yeah, I guess kind of that idea of like having the emergency fund, like creating a plan for scaling, like the fixed versus variable costs. Like, what does that look like in your business? Diversifying revenue, which it's like, okay, I'm queen of that. I'm like, what else can I do?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's great.
but I guess like, is there, what am I trying to ask? Like a way to kind of look at cash flow and yeah, I guess if you have cash flow coming in, say, and you're like making a profit, like what do you think is like a good breakdown for like how much goes into, say an emergency fund or like, just like a backup that's not the emergency fund, but just like what prudent reserve, is that what it's called? Like when you just have
Yeah.
kind of like an excess in your bank account, but you pretend it's not there,
Hmm.
which is kind of how I run. Um,
It's good.
but yeah, like, is there like a percentage that you recommend or just like kind of a rough idea of what that might look like?
That's a great question. I would say it varies depending on the business, and kind of what your cash flows are. I would say start from, okay, how much am I bringing in? And how much of that is like, okay, I'm counting on that coming in versus, I may or may not get orders or I may or may not have, customers, right? Um, and then you can kind of say, okay, how much am I paying myself? Because we should be obviously paying ourselves and saving for retirement. If you have questions on that, call me. I do not skimp on retirement savings. Um, but so beyond that, let's say you have, your business is out of debt, you're bringing in money, you're putting in inputs, right? You have expenses, you keep track of that,
Mhm,
you can use your tax advisor. If you do your own, you can look at, here's how much coming in, here's how much I'm, spending, and then here's how much I'm taking home. And that kind of decides your tax situation. So have a good idea of your tax situation for sure. Work with a tax advisor. I'm not one, but, I always recommend that. And then two, let's say you have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up and like you know, if I were to be in a situation where, let's say, no money was coming in, like, something happened where, you had to shut down or God forbid, let's say for 6 months, you have no money coming in, you have that reserve, that emergency fund to draw on, right?
mhm,
Um, but then what happens after that, beyond that? So if you want to have that extra layer of cushion and you have the, luxury of being able to sock away some extra cash, I mean, it's really up to you how long you'd want to stay afloat before either folding or just putting things on pause.
mhm.
Um, so I guess it's up to kind of your discretion. I would say for sure, have a 3 to 6 months. But anything beyond that, it really just depends on, how long you would stay open, like, or continue
Yeah.
on. So it's hard to say, but it's really like your comfort level.
Okay. Yeah. I think, yeah. Sometimes you hear people like, oh, it's this magic percentage or, this and this, but it's like, what if that doesn't work for my business? It's like, it's good to hear that
Right.
it's like, it can be variable. It's okay. Like, do what
Yes.
makes sense for you. Because I think sometimes we hear like, you need to, hard and fast, it's, 40% always this much into, goes into this account or 50% of that has to go here. And it's like, but what if I have to pay bills that
Right.
doesn't work for?
That's why business owning is so nuanced because you are very cash flow centric,
Hmm.
um, versus, as an individual, like let's say you're a salaried employee and like X amounts coming in every 2 weeks, and here's how much I'm going to be paying my bills, and here's how much I'm going to save for retirement, and here's how much I'm going to sock away, in extra cash.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes with businesses like and this, we know this, expenses come up that are unforeseen. You may have, you just may not, bring in as much revenue as you had hoped or expected. So it's really looking at, how much am I bringing in gross, like,
Hmm.
before you take out expenses and taxes, how much, it's a cash flow discussion. And depending on, those numbers, I could help someone, what makes sense for you, depending on the numbers. That makes sense. So it's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like not really a helpful answer, but it varies across the board, really.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean that makes sense because it's like my business is not going to be able to stack away as much as like a brick and mortar shop that has like hundreds of customers a day,
Right.
where I'm helping like individuals at a time kind of thing. So, well that's good to hear though, because I think again, like I said, you kind of hear these hard and fast, like you have to use this percentage or whatever, but it kind of takes the pressure off to go, no, it's okay to do what is right for your business and not what like some other person who runs a completely different business is trying to tell you, you know?
Right. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
if it's not
But
coming from somebody who knows your numbers or your personal situation, then it's like, don't listen.
right. Exactly. Yeah, you'd have to know it'd be nuanced. So yeah, I'd love to help anyone, answer that question and go through the numbers together. But I do have a question for you, like
Okay.
as a quilting business owner, like how did you get into that field and like what made you want to monetize it?
Um, well, my mom's been sewing basically her whole life, so my whole life, naturally, and it was like not really ever something that I wanted to do because it gave me a ton of anxiety. And then, I had friends who started quilting in like the mid 2010s, and they were like, "You guys are like," to me and our other friend, they were like, you guys are gonna learn how to quilt." We were like, "That's hilarious." No, we're not. Um, so in like 2017. I want to say. Um, they finally sat us down and forced us to make a quilt. And I was like, oh, I can actually do this. Like I had worked it up in my head all over my whole childhood that I don't know how to use a sewing machine. I'll just break it. Like I can't sew. Anyway, so then Um, so I learned like the basics of building a quilt, and then I went to the local quilt shop and learned how to do the finishing steps, like the long arming. And that I was like, I love this part so freaking much. So I was constantly trying to be in there, reserving the machines as much as I could. And I was like, I'm spending so much money in here. And my mom, the same, she was like, I love this part too. This is so fun.
Mm.
And we were kind of spitballing, like, what if we did buy a machine and like we could, because my friends who also quilted, I'm like, we could let them rent it out and they could just like pay less than what they paid the quilt shop, but then they could come get it, rent it anytime. And if people wanted us to, we could eventually quilt for people. And my husband, being the business and numbers guy that he is, he was like, what's the worst that could happen? And we were like, we own a long arm that we have to pay for. And he was like, okay, well, if we're splitting it 50-50, then like, what's the worst that could happen? And my mom was
Right.
like, let's do it. So we,
That's
yeah, started. I mean, I think it was like a year and a half into just having learned how to quilt at all that we started Sweet Pea Design Company. And where we were just running it out of my mom's basement. I was a full-time teacher at the time, so she was like mostly running it, and we just got clients word of mouth. We were going to the local quilt shops, passing out business cards like, "Oh, we have this business." And um, of course my friends would come use the machine and all that stuff. And then um in after the 2020-2021 school year, I was like, I'm done. I'm out of here. This is killing me slowly. So, and all I was like, just daydream about the business. And so then I left teaching to be full time in the business with my mom. And that was great. And that's when I was like, we need to start an Etsy shop. We need to offer like custom quilt making services, not just the long arming. Like we need to diversify our revenue streams. And um, that worked really great. And then now that I've bought the business out from my parents and run it myself, I'm like having to scale that part back because now we're back down to basically one person running the whole business. So anyway,
yeah,
yeah,
awesome.
it helps having a husband who like loves starting businesses and has like such an entrepreneurial spirit and knowledge. And um because if I'm like, I want to do this for the business, he's like, great, let's figure out how to make it happen. And I'm like,
Yeah.
hell yes.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
there is, I mean, you said it, there's an element of risk when you do anything,
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna own this huge machine that may cost, a ton of money, and then we're stuck with it. Okay, yeah. And then, you realize that, and that's part of being a business owner is like having to be agile too.
Yeah.
Um, and that's something too, like working with my dad, like, he has his way of doing things. I'm sure your mom had her way of doing things. And then, but you bring like a fresh new perspective as well of like, okay, we gotta like stay with the times. We gotta get to Etsy. We gotta do this. We gotta, so
Mhm.
it's fun and it's creative to own a business as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure, quilters, you guys are creative by nature, I'm sure. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Have
sometimes
to be.
people think, oh, the business stuff is kind of boring or dry, like, the financial part of it, but it can also be creative as well. So that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be a creative thinker, I think, when it comes to figuring out how your money is going to work, how how are you going to interact with your clientele so that it doesn't feel overbearing, but also like they stay informed and you're fully aware of the costs up front as much as you can, because some of it's like my labor hours are a little bit variable depending on the project. And so that can be a number that moves, but it's like if I know the fabric amount, if I know the size of the quilt, I know exactly how much the quilting's going to cost. Like there are costs involved that like are always going to be calculable and like predictable, but it's like, but just being open with clients is like a huge thing that I had to learn. And not
Mhm.
that I like wanted to hide anything from them, but it was like a fear of like, oh, I'm going to tell them that it's going to be this much and then they're not going to want this quilt anymore.
Oh,
And then because, people will be like, "How much would it be to get this type of quilt made?" And I kind of rough estimate like, "Okay, probably this much fabric, probably this much batting, probably this much backing fabric, like probably this much in quilting because it's going to approximately be this side." Like, and so we got really good at doing a rough estimate, but we were leaving out our labor hours for the first like couple of years of the business. And like I was like, "Mom, we're not making any money." She's like, "Well, I don't know." I'm like, "We're not charging anybody for our labor to build the quilts. Like, we're doing everything else as if they're the ones who built the quilt. But if we're building it for them, like from start to finish, like that our time isn't being included." And she was like, "Oh my gosh." And so we both like had to really talk about that and make that decision. And it was like, how much is our time worth? And I think
right,
that can be a tricky spot in creative businesses is because there's not really like an industry standard, which seems wild, but at the same time, it's art essentially. And so people are like, they either like, I can make that myself. I'm like, great. I beseech you, like, please learn this craft and do it yourself. I would love that for you
right,
because
right.
then one more person knows how to quilt and that's one less, you know, like, or one more person that's going to help keep it alive. And, but then, it's the people who are like, "You're too expensive. I could go get that quilt for, $500 less over there." And I'm like, "Great, but what are you sacrificing in quality?" If a person is not willing to value the fact that that quilt took them 57 hours to make and they're going to charge you just the cost of materials, like that devalues the business for everybody. And so that's been like such a hot topic of conversation the last few years, especially kind of in the quilty Instagram world of like, we
Yeah.
can't approach this like our labor is worth nothing just because we're women in a creative business space. So that can
Do you have a
be,
follow-up question to that? Like, do
yeah.
you think in the age of like Instagram and idea sharing, I feel like it's easy to go out there and get information now. So do you think idea sharing with other people that you would normally like, run in circles with, just by nature of being far away, you're able to, share those experiences and better your business because of that
Yeah.
in terms of
Yes.
charging? Like, because that's a
Yeah.
huge,
Yeah. I think so. And I think because people are being more vocal about it,
yeah,
um, they are saying like, this isn't okay to assume that my business isn't valuable because I'm a woman doing something creative. Like it's it has sparked a conversation. It has sparked some controversy because like people have kind of come out of the woodwork and been forced out of the shadows to say like, no, I don't believe that my pattern testers should be financially compensated. And whatever that means, for some people, it's like, I can give you a $50 gift card to contribute towards the fabric that you would need for this, or because there's a big community of pattern testers for pattern writers so that they
mhm,
can quality test their pattern. And I've been on that side of things. I was testing patterns for a little while and it was a great way to learn, but also when it got to the point where it was interfering with my business, I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore because I'm not getting anything from this. Like skill building, sure, but ultimately like the long arming and the quilting I can be doing for my business is going to benefit me more.
right.
And so yeah, yes. The short answer is yes.
That's great. And I think, you learn along the way as an entrepreneur. how much time you're putting into things and how much your time is worth. And I think as women too, like sometimes we want to keep the peace and we want to get the sale and we want to, what, and that's all great, but you also have to like know your, the worth of your time and stand behind that. And sometimes it's easier said than done sometimes. But sometimes our male counterparts are just as unapologetic, and so we kind of have to adopt that as business owners to be like, you know what? Yes, this is the price. I can work with you on this much, and then beyond that, that's it. Sorry, like so, and that's
Yeah.
part of owning a business too, is knowing again, coming back to like, what's my bottom line of my margin? And then
Hmm.
what do I need to do to get there? And if you're going to spend your time, apologizing for your prices and lowering them, you're not going to make it to your margin, obviously, at the end of
No.
the day. So you're like, you kind of have to be, and it might be uncomfortable for some folks. But I think standing up for your business and like, your worth and your time is so powerful just energetically to be like, even for personal finance, like, you know, certain things in life, like if I inspect, obviously I'm a finance nerd, so every receipt I get, I'm like double triple checking it, like, oh, you charged me for, like, even at the grocery store.
Yeah.
But just like a little, like even like $2 or $1, like everything adds up. So it's like
Mhm.
moving in that direction and being unapologetic, and these are my prices. And guess what, like prices of your time go up over time because you're gaining more experience and you're becoming better at what you do.
Exactly.
So I think that's a huge thing. Like, just like an attorney, if you have a brand new attorney, their going rate may be lower than someone who's been practicing law for 15, 20, 30 years.
Hmm.
Same thing goes for anybody else,
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really, really powerful. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you brought that up because it's like, and when I've talked to other quilters who kind of struggle with that, like, oh, I struggle with pricing. I'm like, what do you want to make from that? Like, if
yes.
somebody were to just write you a check, they didn't care, like, what price would you tell them? Okay, what do you need to get there to get comfortable with that number? Like, what are you telling yourself in your head that's making you believe that you're not worthy of that number?
Yeah.
And I think that's where we kind of get in our own way, where society gets in women's way, is we're conditioned to be small, to not get in the way, and to like not make waves. And so those of us who are willing to make a little bit of a wave to say, no, I actually have value and I've put in the hours. I've sat
Mhm.
at my machine for hundreds and hundreds of hours
Yes.
to learn these skills. And I've sat at that long arm and I have long armed hundreds of quilts to learn these skills. Like, when I was brand new, when we very first got the business, I was like terrified of our machine. I was terrified of like using the computer system to to
Yeah.
set up the designs and get it going. And it took the consistency of me coming into the business full time and doing it repeatedly multiple times a day, every day. And now I can do it with my eyes closed.
Yeah, you're like an expert. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I've done my 10,000 hours. Like,
Yeah.
you owe me money when you hire my services. Like, I'm the expert in this situation.
Yeah. And that
And
comes with time of like being more comfortable with your skills and your abilities to
yeah,
kind of say it like it is and say, I want to help everybody, but that isn't always possible if you don't want to
yeah.
don't want to pay the fee. I can't
Yeah.
help you.
Yeah, exactly. And there's instances where it's like I'll contribute my skills to this because I believe in it, or I can offer this as like a charity service or something like that.
Right,
There's been
exactly.
times where I found those like donated my time or
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but it's not it's because I wanted to, not because I felt guilty and felt like I needed to. And
Right.
so I think that can be a huge difference, is like kind of being able to step back from it all and go, okay, like I see how what I'm doing in my business is projecting my self-worth. Like,
Hmm.
if I'm not valuing my work high enough, then I'm telling other people I don't value my work very much and that they shouldn't either.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, going back to like all the money stuff, like knowing your numbers, knowing your costs, and like that breakdown, your break even, it's like, okay, but what do you want to make on top of that?
Right.
Like, what do you need to see to be able to feel good about the work that you're doing? And that can be such a hard question to ask when you're not used to looking at yourself in the mirror and being honest with yourself. I'm saying
Right.
this from so much experience of like,
Yeah.
having to literally get in the mirror and be like, all right, bitch, we're gonna do this. We're gonna get real today, you know?
Yeah.
So
No, 100%. And knowing too, like where your time is best spent,
mhm,
get to your margins is huge because as a business owner, like it's not as easy as like, working for someone else. You go in, you sit down, you log in, and like I'm gonna work for this person for 8 hours today, and then I log out, and then that's it. I know I'm getting paid. As a business owner, like your days could be completely different every single day, and I feel that sometimes. I'm like, which I like it because I'm not in that monotony. I'm someone who needs to like be stimulated and be out there.
yeah.
Um, but where is your time best spent?
Hmm.
Prioritizing that. And that always changes too. Like, where
Yeah.
am I making the most sales or what's bringing me the most joy to do? And then obviously, like, where can I make money from that?
Yeah.
Is the bottom line. We can't always, I love to walk outside, but walking outside isn't always going to make me money. Um,
Yeah,
so I'm
exactly.
weaving that into my off time. But like what's bringing me joy and and creating that list is so powerful too of like, okay, here's my priorities of like what I enjoy doing, where, in the past, let's say 6 months or a year, like what were the biggest money makers? Like just bulleting out a list and
Hmm.
looking maybe at your numbers, obviously is just powerful because then you can say, okay, moving forward, like what am I going to focus on and become
Yeah.
laser focused on those things. And just writing it down, I have found is so powerful too, to kind of set your intention to be like, okay, I love selling quilts on Etsy, let's say.
Mhm.
And I sold, 10 in the past. I don't know if I'm just throwing numbers out there. I don't know what's realistic because you said 57 hours. So I'm like,
No.
maybe you can't do 10 in 2 months. She's like, not at all.
Nope. Nope.
So let's say you did 5 in the past year, like amazing quilts, and they were like amazing money makers for you, and you're
Hmm.
super proud, and you want to like post it all over the internet and be like, everyone, look at my beautiful quilts. You made good money off of those. So let's say, what do I need to do to create that or continue that momentum? Writing it down and having a vision is like huge, and I adopt that in my life with all my goals, personal and professional.
Hmm.
And sometimes they merge, like or owning a business, there is no delineation of like, okay, I'm working and now I'm not working. Like you're just kind of like living in that's your reality of your world. And I
Yeah.
love it for so many reasons because I have the flexibility to kind of run things how I like. But then you have to be focused and you have to be good at prioritizing and managing time as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. It's definitely a trip going from like, I mean, I've worked retail like all through college and whatever, but then like getting into like a real job, like I have contract hours. I have to be at school from this time to this time every day. And very quick, like my first year, I would stay till like 6 p.m., whatever. And I'm like working
wait, what
60-hour
age are you
weeks.
teaching?
I was teaching third grade.
Okay, nice.
So like 8 and 9 year olds. They were so I loved it. I just like anyway. Uh but like my first year, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's that kind of thing. You have to put in the time and not really feeling supported by the team around me or like how, to get me started. It was a charter school, so things were a little bit different. There wasn't like a direct set curriculum. And there was
Mhm.
a whole piece of it that was like inquiry based. And they're like, you just figure it out. And I'm like, okay, like what does that mean? And
Yeah,
so I spent a lot of time that first year. And then I slowly started pulling back and I would take work. I'm gonna get all this done home. It's like, nope. And then because I'm like, I'm only getting so much money from this. Like if I work outside of these 8 hours a day, I'm not getting
yeah,
a
that.
dime more. I'm not getting overtime. I'm not getting benefits. Like I'm not getting nothing from this. And so I just got to a point where I just wouldn't even bring anything home unless it was like absolutely necessary. Like I
Yeah,
have to get these last 5 report cards done by midnight and it's 7 p.m. Like,
I
I
have
mean,
to, yeah, go home and do it. Yeah.
yeah. So but then like, but my time was very structured. It was like I had my kids in my room from this time to this time. They had to go at this time and it's like all the things. And then to step out and be like, "Ooh, I work for myself and I am going to my parents' house every day to work, but it's like I also need time in the mornings to run my household and like, you know, be home at a certain time. I would like to be home at a certain time to be with my family, my husband, our kids, like whatever. And like my cat, go do the things I want to do, go to the gym, go hike in the hills, whatever.
Yeah.
And so setting a time boundary and with the podcast, because I've been like, as I stepped away from teaching, I also stepped into building this podcast. And so for the last 4 years, I've just been like pushing to get this thing out there while running the business, while, it's like all these other things. But
You wear a ton of different hats, I've learned.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, going from, working for someone else and having that, it's just a different kind of stress, I would say.
hmm,
But now, yeah, having those good time boundaries has helped me a ton. Because I'm like,
yeah,
oh, my day's just kind of like whatever I make it now. So I'm like, I like to have a, set plan for the day and know, what's on my calendar, and I'm pretty good with that. But the time boundary is huge, especially working with family. Like, I'm like, okay, dad, we're like in the office, we're working, we're talking business. And then when we're at home, with family, doing whatever, we try not to talk about it. Of course, it comes up, but like, yeah,
right.
having that delineation, I'm sure is it was interesting at first. Now we're like pretty good about it, but
Yeah. It's hard with quilting because it's like the thing my mom and I love the most. It's like outside of the business, it's our hobby still. Like I still sew and quilt for myself
yeah,
on my off time. And so does she. So it's like hard to not talk about it because it's also the thing that we love so much and the thing that brings
yeah.
us so much joy. So that was a little bit tricky. We'd like be at a family birthday party and we'd be like talking quilting and everybody's like, oh my God. We're like, what? We love it. Like, did you see this new fabric that just came out? Like,
Yeah, but that's great. So you still love quilting, even
yeah.
though you've adopted it as kind of like work, you still
Mhm.
love doing it. That's great. That's how I feel about my work. So,
Good.
okay, so you were a third grade teacher. That's really great. I have a twin sister. She's a teacher.
Oh,
She lives in Chicago,
whoa.
and she teaches Montessori fourth, fifth, and sixth in the same room. So
Yeah.
yeah, needless to say, when I speak to her after working hours, she's like really exhausted.
I used to drive home in silence. Like,
She's like, I need peace. Like, I'll call her. I'll be like, what's up? She's like, honestly, I can't speak right now. I've just been, talking all day on my feet all day. And she's like, I can't hear Miss Kelsey one more time.
I know. I'm like, nobody better call me Mrs. Oros for a very long time because I can't hear it.
That's great. She loves it, but yeah, definitely. It's just a different kind of life, like working a full-time job versus like, being a business owner.
Yeah. Yeah. And like teaching is such a different thing. Like you have to make micro decisions all day long. So you're constantly in decision making mode
Mhm.
and everything changes like every 5 seconds. And so, as much predictability as you try to have for the kids, so there's structure for the kids on the back end, you're making a million decisions a minute. And so the fatigue is like so real.
Yeah.
And I applaud, like, I said our kids, but like I have stepkids and they're a little older. So, like, I never did like the baby phase with any of them, but also I'm
Mhm.
the oldest daughter, sister, cousin, whatever. So I've like always had babies around in my life. So I'm like, I'm done with that. But anyway, and so they were like easy kids. And like, even if we were driving home from school, because they went to the same school as I worked for a while, they were still like pretty chill. But I don't understand how people have the energy to go from teaching all day to then go home and be parents to like small children. It's exhausting. And as good and like easy as my boys have been, like even that sometimes I was like, can you
Could be
please
exhausting.
just make a quesadilla? I'll be out of my room in an hour. Just give me an
Not
hour.
hard to do this anymore. Somewhat. I'm ordering takeout.
Yeah, yeah. So it's I applaud people who I like I love education. Obviously, like I value it so highly and I just admire teachers. I still have several friends who are teachers and it's a huge deal. But so
Yeah. I really do hand
good
it to
on your
all of
sister.
my educators.
Yeah.
I always say like there's a huge element of education in my field and
Yeah.
dealing with people. Our take on things is definitely from very educational point of view. I don't like
Yeah.
to tell people how it's going to be. I explain what my advice is and why,
Mhm.
so our clients understand why we're doing the things we're doing, and what the point is. But it's not the same as dealing with a class full of people.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
to take what I can from my sister, from because she's just such an amazing teacher, and the patience she has is like unreal, with 20 to 30 children. So I
Mhm.
try to take that with me on a smaller scale.
Yeah. Yeah. It honestly has been so valuable in the business. Like being able to explain things to people, being able to break things down if they're not understanding like the process or whatever. I'm like, okay, how do I explain this differently? Like I have that skill and it's
Yeah.
very practiced and I spent a lot of time doing it. So it's like,
Yes.
and doing it in a way that's like, I'm just trying to help you instead of like, I can't believe you don't know this and like condescending because that can turn a person off a business ASAP. Like
100%.
I will never talk to some people again because of how they talked to me when I needed help. And I'm like, you're not my person. You're not, you're not the company I'm going to work with. You're not the person I'm going to interact with very much because you treated me like I was stupid when I didn't know what you already know. And that's
Right.
like, we can't all know everything all the time. So if I'm coming to you with a question, like, if you're not nice to me, you're dead to me. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Not vibing with that. But I'm sure your educational background helps you so much more like in the quilting world because I feel like there's a ton to learn and people are probably, jumping in from square one like you were one day,
hmm
long time ago. So do you teach a lot? Do you find that you teach a lot of people skills or, do you focus on a lot of education through your podcast?
Yeah, I think the podcast, my goal with it is to just like give people a platform to share their story, but also introduce myself and my listeners to like quilters and artists that maybe they haven't experienced before. I have like a huge range of kind of, I guess, if you want to call it like celebrity status of people,
Uh,
but it's a pretty like diverse range of people, which is cool. But I think where I focus on it is with my long arming clients because it's like if they're newer to quilting and they're bringing their quilt tops for me to finish on my long arm, like I find little spots. Most of them, like, I don't need to tell you anything because you got this because they've been quilting for 50 years. And like, okay, I'll just help do this part because you don't
yeah.
need anything from me. But, some people who are kind of newer to it and I see trouble areas, like I'm not gonna judge your quilt. Like I was in the same boat. My very first quilts are kind of popping at the seams. There's things that are wrong with them, but it's just I just went for it, right? Like,
Just a learning experience. Yeah.
yeah. And so if I see things that I'm like, ooh, they could fix this so easily with this one little thing, I'll show them. I'll be like, hey, this was a little bit tricky for me to quilt over whatever, but here's how I fixed it. And here's how you can fix it in the future so that we don't have to run into this again because it just helps one for not racking up extra charges where I have to fix your mistakes.
Right. Right.
And we all make mistakes. So that's not to say that I have to fix every single one, but the ones that are glaring that need fixing, that costs extra money.
Yeah.
And to show that person like you were so close and you if you just do this one minor tweak, you can get there and not have to deal with this again on your end so that you can feel more successful in your practice and your hobby. And um I find that to be rewarding on both sides because then I see this person's skills grow as they bring me more and more quilt tops and I get to see them on a like very like zoomed in level
Yeah.
because I'm like hovering over it making sure it's the design is stitching out perfectly, it's not puckering, it's not it's like looking good and they get to bring me a quilt that they know that they've improved on and be like, oh, look at this one, doesn't it look so much better, and I can
Yeah.
share in that joy with them. So I do have one like little homeschooled student who I see every couple weeks and she just her aunt found me randomly and was like, I have my niece, like she's kind of teaching herself to sew, but do you do lessons? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I just was like, yeah, I've got a teaching background. Like I can teach if she wants to bring her own machine, great. If not, I've got one, a basic one she can learn on. And she's like, no, she's got her own machine. We can bring it with us. And so I just see this little third, and she's third grade. So she's like perfect age. Like, I'm like, I know how to do this. Like, it felt really good.
Actually, I
And
used
so,
to teach a bunch of third graders. I'm
yeah,
good.
yeah. That's why I told her, I was like, I was a third grade teacher. So this is like the exact age I am like most comfortable with. And so, anyway, so that's fun. And I do want to build that side. So, like, I guess, yeah, like, we can kind of get into like a more personal side of this is like I'm looking at the potential of like growing into having a teaching side because I still love that part, but like what is that going to look like for my business? And like do you have like markers that someone should look for or just like kind of steps towards like looking at numbers, like what should I be looking for in terms of like how do I build that ability to like take on a new thing, or like if I wanted to add a second machine, or
Yeah, that's
I
a
don't
great.
know.
So
Is
like
that
the
too
scale.
broad?
No, I mean, for scaling, let's say you're trying to build out your teaching, your educational portion. I would think through, okay, with anything in entrepreneurship, like what is the main problem that I'm addressing through my service, my good or service, right?
Hmm.
Um, so you're, addressing, of course, your quilting business as a whole is obviously providing, what did you say, like finishing with
Hmm.
long arm, maybe selling some supplies online, maybe
Hmm.
creating, start to finish your own quilts and selling them. So that's solving kind of a need for finishing the process for someone or building out and providing the good. So now you're switching kind of like your scope of service to
Hmm.
include that like education portion. So how, what is the problem you're going to address is that, and it can be very granular, like, maybe you enjoy teaching third graders. So you could say like the education of youth. And that's the problem that that I'm going to
Yeah.
address is, helping to educate people who don't have the knowledge or skill set. And you can focus your age from anywhere. Maybe, you say, I don't know, how old are you in third grade? Like 10 years old?
Eight, I think 8 or 9. Yeah.
8, 9. Yeah. So you could say
Yeah.
like, ages 8 to 12, if that's where your sweet spot is. Or you could open it up to adults who want to like learn something. I'm sure there's plenty of adults out there who are picking up a different hobby. I
Hmm.
know, myself, I recently picked up golf and I'm like, I don't even, it's been 3 years, but I'm like, I haven't even seen any improvement, honestly. But it's like as an adult,
Golfing's
I'm like,
hard.
it is hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So picking up a new hobby and not knowing. So, okay, so that's your problem. Let's say start there. That's the problem I'm solving. Who is my target demographic? Okay, let's say 8 to 13 years old is who I want to, focus on, because I enjoy, enriching the youth and showing them my skills and teaching them from square one. And then deciding, how much of my day do I want to give to this. Maybe you can make it on a weekly basis, like how many hours, and then
Hmm.
decide like how much is are my hours worth, and then kind of go from there. And then say, to make this worth it, how much, how many lessons, or should I be doing this per month, let's say, and then
Yeah.
analyze it and say, if I keep this, education portion of my practice up at this rate, I can bring in X amount a year. And then maybe that can open you up to having a little bit more cash flow to buy more, supplies, or maybe put more money into marketing, or, putting more time into your pot. Like it's always going to be a time, what's the value of your time? Where's your time best spent? And then how are you going to get the word out to, like, marketing is a huge one.
Yeah.
And you do have a great podcast, so I think that's a great marketing tool to kind of like get the word out, and then deciding
Yeah.
price, and then going from there. And it's all just puzzle pieces, really. So like if you're like, okay, I want to buy another machine, like maybe you want a new, the newest, greatest, updated machine to teach people on. Well, that
Yeah.
costs money. So I would say, maybe you can start on the machine you have, and then when I hit this metric, I can go ahead and take some cash and save up for a machine, kind of thing. And that would be beyond your emergency fund. So, like, to your question, like if you have specific goals, meaning like I want to purchase a new machine, let's say it's a $7,000 machine. Okay, how much do I need to be bringing in to buy it in maybe a year or 6 months or whatever? Like kind of like backing into how much you should be saving, and then how
Okay.
much can I be making, with
Mhm.
it. And obviously, like, you're not going to be like, my rate is $900 an hour, like, for
Yeah.
that reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
You would know, like you would, and maybe too, like I find talking to subject matter experts, maybe, someone in your field, maybe there are other people across the US doing, educational,
Mhm.
like I don't know, lessons, or, things like that. And even maybe someone outside of your field. Like what came to my mind was like a piano teacher, like,
Yeah.
little, like, I know my little cousins used to go to like a piano teacher. Like, how much are they charging? What is their what is their experience and education look like to be charging that amount?
Mhm.
So just kind of going from there, getting some comps, and then getting an idea of like what you're comfortable doing.
Yeah. I
That's
love that. Thank you. Yeah. Because there are definitely things I'm like, I have these goals and these ideas, and I'm like, okay, but how do I feasibly go about this? And I have found like I've really loved teaching this little girl the process, like, because she came to me, she's like, I've been making my own scrunchies. I'm like, perfect. Well, what do you want? What do you want to learn from me? Like,
Yeah.
because obviously I can teach you quilting, I can teach you other, do you want to mend clothes?
Oh,
Do you want to
wait.
make clothes? Like, and she was like, yeah, but she's like, I think I want to make a quilt. And I was like, great. Then we're going to make a quilt start to finish. Like, I'm going to teach you how to cut your fabric. I'm going to teach you how to sew it together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance because that is the most important part of quilting. I'm going to teach you, how to load it on the machine. You're going to long arm your own quilt. And she was like, what? I'm like, you get to drive this machine that probably weighs 3 times as much as you do. And like,
I got
um,
a little queen. I love that.
yeah, she's so cute. And like, I've just been really having so much fun with it. And it's just like, little hour sessions and yeah, how to scale that. And it's hard because it's like out of my home. So I only have so much space. And so there's different things like for my business specifically that I kind of, intricacies and again, nuance that you have to like that I have to consider. Um, but anyway, yeah, that's answering those questions, like the kind of like what, who, how, whatever the 5 W's are and the H.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, that's great. No, I love that. I think my brain is full. Um, but thank you so much for being here. This has been so great to chat with you and
Thank you for having me.
yeah, getting
So
to pick
awesome.
your brain and
Yeah,
uh,
so I would say for all business owners and everyone, like just surround it out. Like most important thing, from my seat and my point of view is creating a plan, you know, listing out your goals and being intentional about those goals, whether they're personal or professional for business owners.
yeah.
Um, and consulting a financial advisor is a huge, huge benefit. And it's a fee, but I think it's worth it to sit down with an objective party, um, mostly objective, and take some of the emotionality out of it, and give
Mhm.
yourself some peace of mind. Um, so yeah, so feel free to reach out to us. We recently launched our own podcast called
Yes.
Wade Through It All: Success Simplified. And it's basically a show that focuses on financial topics mainly. We're going to bring on some fun guests, and amazing topics moving forward. But it's my dad and I. We offer some unique and fresh perspectives together. It's really been fun for us to do something creative like this. So check us out, anywhere you get your podcasts. And then feel free to check out our website, www.rmwadeco.com. There's an inquiry box on there. We'll get back to you. We'd love to have that conversation and steer you in the right direction. We want to help anyone and everyone. So it's been such a pleasure to be here. And
Yeah.
I learned a lot more about quilting. So now I'm interested in long arming.
Yeah. Yeah. It's honestly to me, it's the most fun part. Like you can piece a beautiful quilt top and you can work with amazing fabric, but like to me, there's nothing like loading that quilt sandwich and like getting a stitching design on it that like just gives it a personality and brings it to life. And I just love that step. So anyway, well, thank you again for being here. And I can't wait for my listeners to hear from you and hopefully, it sparks some good decision making on their part. And if they really need help, they can reach out to you and you can be a great guide for them. So thank you again, Abigail, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Amanda.